Okay, first, you're bald.
Invincible, it's back. Don't you love it when they break up the release of something so you have to work yourself up again? In this case, it interrupted my quarter-life David Lynch phase.
What a heavy load Einstein must have had.
The first season of Invincible was a real shock to the system, where the boys had fun poking and prodding the superhero genre from a satirical position.
I am better!
What a heavy load.
Invincible was also subversively dark and violent, but it wasn't for the purpose of exaggeration or humor. Instead, its goal was to seemingly evolve the genre in ways the more protected superhero IPs can't. Therefore, what you've got is a unique and idiosyncratically advanced version of the genre's tropes, archetypes, and themes that's performed with more tension, complexity, and freshness. In other words, Ant-Man Quantumania feels a bit less interesting now. The second season doesn't have the surprise, but what it does have is a lot of misery and pain to slowly explore. I had a really good time. The season's ordeal kinda reminds me of this quote by Eckhart Tolle. To be identified with your mind is to be trapped in time. The compulsion to live almost exclusively through memory and anticipation. This creates an endless preoccupation with past and future, and an unwillingness to honor and acknowledge the present moment and allow it to be. The compulsion arises because the past gives you an identity and the future holds the promise of salvation, of fulfillment in whatever form. Both are illusions. Yes, I've just quoted a new age spiritual book. I'm enjoying it while I'm commuting, okay? There's a lot going on in Invincible Season 2. So many characters, themes, and parallels. But what stood out to me as the uniting pattern are the characters' confusion with dealing with a hole in their soul. A hole created by time and is widened by their inability to be present in the moment.
I don't want to adjust to this.
Angstrom, Donald, Rick, Eve, Rex, Debbie, they all have contradictory understandings of themselves that are then alleviated because of a connection with someone in the present. Or in the case of Angstrom, that comes in the form of a fist connecting with his face. Now if you want to learn more, my spirituality course only costs $299 per month. There's this moment where Rex is with Eve after she accidentally built a park on a sinkhole.
And I'm not here to make fun of you.
His response to her guilt is to remind her of her broader history of successful altruism, to convince her that this mistake was an anomaly.
Just do the math, Eve. You are so far in the black that it's stupid.
As a result, Eve is given the necessary context to resume as she was, and not go back to living with her parents. I think it's really interesting to juxtapose this moment with Amber and Mark individually ruminating the sustainability of their relationship, because where Eve is told to carry on as she was, Mark and Amber struggles with coming to terms with changing. Amber understands Mark is a superhero, so not having anyone when she lost her grandpa and failing her grades is small potatoes, but that only mixes her loneliness with guilt, while Mark also feels terrible for dropping her all the time, because he feels like he's dead.
I don't want that kind of life for Amber. She deserves better.
He was also in her position, growing up. Therefore, despite being with different people in different places, they both arrive at the same point.
I knew dating Mark would be difficult, I just didn't know it would be so lonely.
I feel like I'm failing Amber.
Despite the differences of these two scenes from two different episodes about two different predicaments, they're also still about characters needing to reclaim some sense of control over their lives, and the only way to do that is to disidentify themselves from their guilt and be able to observe themselves as a whole. That's what Rex gets Eve to do, and that's what the eventual breakup allows Mark to do.
With everything I can do, tell me why I need to go to college. I have to get better. I have to learn how to control myself.
I'm now going to connect it all with, yep, you guessed it. Recovery can take place only within the context of relationships. It cannot occur in isolation. Thank you so much, Judith Herman. I'm so glad some of your academic work is on Google Scholar. Oh wait, the quote continues. In renewed connections with other people, the survivor recreates the psychological faculties that were damaged or deformed by the traumatic experience. These include the basic capacities for trust, autonomy, initiative, competence, identity, and intimacy. A moment and character who really encapsulates this is Rick.
I'm missing parts of me and I don't know what to do.
Him and Donald were both brought back to life with missing memories as an attempt to spare them from the, ironically enough, trauma. However, precisely due to the lack of knowledge a black hole of rage and confusion. Thank you, Jared Leto's Joker. Is created. Trauma's power comes from how it robs the victim's sense of control through an overwhelming, wordless feeling. A feeling which is exhaustive because of how repetitive it is. This is especially impossible when you're on your own, because chances are you're not going to try putting it into words if you're keeping the trauma to yourself. You're going to try find answers by revisiting the painful past in your mind, but that means turning the experience into an inescapable cycle in the present. The answer is, thus, Donald forming a therapeutic alliance by precisely contextualizing the feeling into words, disempowering it.
The two of you are helping me to see that now.
How?
Each time I died, each time I was put back together, it was because I helped make this world a little better. You did the same when you fought back against Sinclair, when you saved Invincible and William's lives. We're not our bodies. We're the decisions we make, the lives we change, the people we love, or who love us.
However, this process of recovery requires careful pacing because avoiding the trauma means stagnation, while approaching hastily can cause you to just relive it. The right pace requires help. Someone to monitor and aid in the development of a new belief system that can untangle the cycle of trauma with greater context. Contexts which can sustain the victim's belief that there is a future and a present not defined by the trauma. And what better way than having people around you?
I get that fixing stuff is your thing, and I get that you want to help. Just talk to me first, like a person. Not a broken gadget or computer or whatever. And not just about what's wrong with me. Most days I'd rather talk about literally anything else.
These moments highlight how connections themselves are knowledge that allows us to see ourselves as a whole and feel like complete beings that were more than what happened to us.
I know the son I raised, and he is no killer.
Trauma recovery is by nature a collaborative process. This is a message this season I think quite wonderfully puts on display. And also for some reason I wrote down "F you Viltrumite motherfuckers" as my conclusion.
Don't know if I was aware a piece was missing. In this puzzle I used to call my life. Oh no, didn't even care enough to be dismissive.
I hardly think about them now.
Because you got through it.
So I have no clue if this video contradicted the Season 2 Part 1 video. I tried rewatching that, but it was so boring that it was impossible for me to pay attention. I'm sorry to the 60,000 people who had to watch that, because yeah. I know I tend to talk about trauma a lot, so this video I actively tried to avoid repeating the same terms and definitions. In fact, Emily Keatley and Michael Pickering weren't even used. So yeah. The idea is, instead of talking about memories, the side of it, I want to talk about the act of recovery on a collaborative level. Hopefully it was interesting. Yeah.
But I needn't bring up your past poor choices in women, including but not limited to my mother.